Well, welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. The Unstoppable Freedom Alliance is part of a growing movement across America that's fighting for freedom and the values and ideals that this country was founded on. I'm really excited about our guest today. His name is Victor Marx. Victor is a former Marine, a world-class martial artist and trainer. He's the founder and president of All Things Possible Ministries, a national faith-based organization. He leads high-risk missions to some of the world's most dangerous places to set people free from trauma and abuse. He's also an author, a speaker, a movie producer. He has one of the most successful and popular podcasts on the air. Most importantly, though, he's been married to his wife, Eileen, for over 30 years, and they have 5 kids. As a man of deep faith, he's one of the kindest and most dangerous men that I know. Come on. Victor, it's an honor to have you on the podcast.
Jimmy, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And man, I like you. And I thank God for you. And I thank God for your son, because that's how we met.
Yes. So I had an opportunity, of course, to visit your headquarters, and you had generously spent most of the day with Jake. And I think you mentioned to me that you hadn't trained anyone in that way this year yet, and you had an opportunity to tell me about that. Tell me about working with Jake.
Well, I met him through Charlie.
Yep.
And and then he, at my stage in the game, in the years I've trained men to be warriors to kill people. And it'll be interesting, the sum total, maybe in heaven, if I ever get to find out the number of bad people that we remove from the face of the earth for our efforts. But with that being said, Jake was this tenacious young man that I've spent time with. We were doing some traveling with Charlie. And then he said, I'm flying in. And I said, well, why don't you come visit? And we'll do a little training. So my idea of training, I typically do a couple little things and say, there you go, kid. See you later.
Go get him.
Yeah. He was unbelievably not only athletic, but smart. So I would teach him something, and then he got it. I mean, he got it, and he owned it very quick, which I was like, oh, well, let's try this. He got it and owned it. Let's try this. So I ended up spending the better part of a day, which I don't do. I don't have days I can just hang out with a young man.
Yeah.
It was such a good investment of my time. And I'll never forget, he sent me a text later. He goes, I'm going to make you proud of me. And I said, you already have.
Wow.
So
that gives me chills.
Well, brother, getting to know your son, it's a direct reflection of you. And I'm not a great dad, never claimed to be. My kids have given me the little Best Dad in the World award. And they gave it with truth. They're like, we love you. You did the best you can.
The best you could.
I gratefully accept this, even though it's not the full truth. I strived to be, but I wasn't. And then I meet somebody like your son and you, and I go, this is how I hope my sons turn out, to be a father like you, to better our next generation. So yeah, that's what led us here.
You.
And I'm glad we can hang out for a bit.
I love hearing stories about my kids and their interactions with people like you. And he's been that way, by the way, from the very beginning.
I believe it.
Yeah, his mom and I knew he was born for special times. We know he's going to make a tremendous difference. He already is. When he was 4 years old, I'd be driving him to and from practice fields, and he would listen so intently. I knew that right away, anything that I invested in him was going to pay off. It was going to have significant dividends. So thanks for doing that.
Well, let me say this to you, to those watching us right now. You just heard a nugget. You just heard a real nugget thrown out on leadership and your ability to grow in different aspects. You've got to be willing to listen.
Yes.
Listen to what people worthy of listening to are saying.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll just get a nugget every now and then. Yeah. But listen, I never forget my biological dad was a martial arts instructor. his father was a professional fighter.
Wow.
From barroom fights to barn fights to bare knuckle fights early, in the early 1900s. And so we're just this generation of, my knuckles tell the story and my nose.
Yeah. I don't want to get hit with those hands, man. I'd have to get real close to the camera to make it look like your hands.
Hey, I've almost knocked myself out shaving or brushing my teeth. I'm like, what the heck? So,
well, I will tell you this. I'll tell you this too. This is funny. So you have a long lineage of fighters, and that's part of the reason why. And I do want to get into your childhood in just a minute, because I do think that the experiences that we have throughout our lives are the things that make us who we are ultimately. If we let God use those things for the greatest good and for his glory, then you can see that full expression, even of the bad times, right?
Yeah, good and bad.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I remember the first time I ever got introduced to you or what you were doing, it was on a video called The Fastest Gun Disarm You'll Ever See. And I'm like, oh, come on, what is this? This is staged, right? Holy smokes. The speed at which you can disarm someone with a gun to really right in your face is unbelievable. Are you that fast?
Yeah, I would say this. I feel like God has given me a gift for speed and non-telegraphic movement. Because there are times I actually do things, one that I don't know, I really don't know physically how I do it. Still, even at my age, because we just came off of a tour of, I think I spoke 20-something times in 5 days, 6 days to different different military groups. And I'm bringing young men up, either doing the gun disarm or hitting them 5 or 6 times right at a second, clocked at a second.
Oh, yeah.
And I just go, Lord, thank you for this gift that you've given me. So, but with that gift was the stewardship of me training thousands, tens of thousands of hours in order to get it to that point. And yet still, that's not what defines me, right? It's gifts and skills can take you to a place where your character can't sustain you.
Yes.
And we focus on gifts and skills, which are important, but boy, you better focus on the character of how are you going to respond if you're successful. Yes. If all that you hope for comes true, how are you going to live that out? Yep. Are you going to let it ruin you? You're going to let it get to your head? You're going to cheat on your spouse? You're going to give up? You're going to compromise for money? Yeah. The character is what matters most these days.
It's kind of like that character is, we always talk about the root of the tree versus the fruit of the tree. That the trees, the height of the tree is dependent upon the depth of the root system. So a lot of times, right, we see all this stuff on the face of it. We see these incredible gifts and talents and strengths that people have, but it really is relatively vulnerable if their character and integrity doesn't support it. And I think that's that's kind of one of your core messages, isn't it?
It is. And it's not only the depth of the roots equal the height of the tree, but the ability to withstand gale force winds, horrible things. And that's why I think this generation, there are a lot of young men and women out there that they don't like embracing the suffering, or we call the suck of life, which it's just part of it. There's physical, there's emotional, which emotional is by far the hardest. Because you can heal from broke bones, lopped limbs, burns, scars. But the emotional is what sticks with you. It's that brain housing group. And I would just encourage your listeners to just, I give you permission to understand and agree, it's okay to suffer. Now, self-induced suffering, bad choices, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about life in general, because believe me, that's your roots going down deep. Yes. For a life that you really want to live and that God's prepared for you. So endure suffering and hardship, especially for the kingdom of God.
Yeah, that's right. I think this idea of shared suffering, right, is such an important concept. It's a spiritual concept, of course, but it's a very practical concept too, because life, you said it, life is hard. I mean,
Yeah.
and let's talk a little bit about, your childhood, those early days. I know from knowing your story a bit that your childhood was filled with significant trauma, significant abuse,
Yeah.
and then probably a whole bunch of decisions that led to, that could have really ended up in a life of self-destruction, but really God turned that around. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, what it was like growing up, some of what you suffered through.
Well, I think everybody has a story, and everybody, pain is relative. I think the consequences are different, but the pain is equal. So when I share my story, I often hear people say, "Oh, I've never experienced anything like that," and I go, "I'm glad,
Yeah.
I'm glad." But maybe an absent father or someone who spoke negative things to you, never physically or sexually abused you, that's just as painful to a young person's heart and mind. And you still have to get over that. You still have to forgive. For me, the night my mom got pregnant with my dad, per them, from their point of view, he straddled her and shoved rosary beads down her throat, and then put a pistol to her head.
Oh my gosh.
So they both came from very, very challenged, tragic backgrounds. His dad died in a mental hospital. The fighter. He had brain damage, and he ended up being institutionalized. My biological dad, who ended up going to the same mental hospital for homicidal tendencies.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's, I'm just at a certain point, I go, wow, we're great fighters, and yet we're crazy.
Yeah.
And
And that's a real tough combination too. Crazy fighters. Nobody wants to be around that.
nobody wants to. I had a guy get in my face one time to fight me. I was in the Marine Corps, and he was a way bit bigger than me and tougher, but he wasn't as crazy. And I remember looking at him and told him a couple of things I went through. I was like, "You ever been locked in a cooler for dead as a kid?" And he was like, "What?" I said, "I have." And that kid in me is about to have some therapy with you. I'll never forget. He was like, "What the hell?"
He's like, I'm out.
Yeah, I don't want crazy. I don't want to fight crazy. I just want to fight ego.
Yeah.
So my mother made poor choices as well because of her background of abuse. And it was just a pitiful combination of two people, super broken, neither knew the Lord, had children together, but I was a leftover, and actually they were divorced when I was born. My father didn't claim me as his own. He thought, for sure my mother had cheated and I was someone else's kid. My mother would go on to marry 6 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
In your childhood, growing up?
In my childhood, saved the last one.
Gee.
And I mean, and my dad, he had his run with being drug dealer, pimp, just really then went the whole education route. That's how he was going to save himself through education, and that certainly didn't work because we both know education doesn't equal smart.
Yeah.
A lot of times just indoctrinated. And,
That's right.
So
especially today.
yeah,
That's another topic. But yeah,
especially today. So my first stepfather was a pedophile. There's no other way to say it. He definitely saw the weakness in my mother, who had suffered from multiple personality disorder, and with 4 children. I think she was age 22, 23 at the time.
Wow.
And he was much older, and he was a predator in my opinion, and he definitely preyed on her. So I suffered abuse from him, which was all forms, including torture. I was dumped. I remember being dunked in a tub till I passed out. Waking up to him breathing in my mouth and him saying, "Boy, don't ever forget I'm the one that gives you life."
Oh my gosh.
And Jimmy, those are lies that are based in reality.
Yeah.
And those are the hardest to get over. And if I could just address that for a second, because I don't like glorifying the darkness.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but I do tell enough so that people understand there's always a way out.
Yes.
God can heal. God can replace lies with truth. You know, the name of our ministry is All Things Possible.
Yeah.
And then I always put a caveat, but it don't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
And you have to get over lies that you've believed about yourself,
Yes.
either as a child or as an adult, and replace it with the truth. And the best way to replace it, in my opinion, is just say the opposite of it.
Yeah.
So the lie is, I give you life. The exact opposite is, you don't give me life, God gives me life.
Yes.
And I lived in fear, from anxiety to, of course, panic attacks, and you know, the craziness that comes through with all of that. I ended up having to have 123 visits to a trauma specialist. I did that in 9 months, so I don't know what the record is, but I was going for it.
You're an overachiever.
I'm a competitor,
Yeah, you are a competitor.
even with myself.
Did you ask? You probably asked him, hey, what's the record?
Yeah, I remember the psychologist saying, yeah, this is out of 35 years of working with people, you know, she goes, I've never seen a more severe case of abuse. A lot of them.
Unreal.
But, you know, I remember telling her, this isn't going to work. And actually, you know, just people can read my book or watch the movie.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
in it. It's,
It's amazing. As you were talking, as you were sharing a little bit about the beginnings, I wrote down a couple of words, hope, you know, and I wrote down, no matter where you start, no matter how hard the circumstances, because these are extreme circumstances. Most people aren't going to experience, thank God, aren't going to experience what you have. However, it's a reminder, because I think a lot of our young people today are growing up with a lack of hope, with a lot of despair. I mean, if you look at the rates of suicide, the depression, the anxiety,
it's off the charts.
the hopelessness, right? But your message, and I think this message that is, no matter where you start, it doesn't determine where you finish. You can overcome unbelievable trauma and hardship, and that there's hope involved in that, isn't there?
There is, and you know what? God made us to heal. That's he didn't. We're breakable, but we're healable.
Yeah.
And when a person defines, you know, despair or hopelessness, I always kind of say, from what perspective? You know, it's is it from first world problems?
Yeah.
You know, someone you like breaks up with you, cheats on you, you're not in the job or position that you would like.
Right.
Okay, those all hurt, but those shouldn't lead you to despair.
Yeah.
Get on a plane with me.
Yeah.
I'll show you people who have a right to live in despair, and yet they don't. You know, they keep staying hopeful. And to me, without hope, you can't really have faith, love. You know, love is most important. Faith matters tremendously, but hope. So,
Isn't it amazing? Like, I just had a thought on that. One of the tactics of the enemy, we believe that there is a spiritual enemy. Obviously, the scripture tells us that, but it doesn't take much to actually experience it in your life if you're just a little bit aware, right? But isn't it amazing that one of the key tactics of the enemy is to isolate, to divide, to make you feel like you're all alone, so that you'll start to believe the lies.
Totally. Well, I mean, think about it. Satan, his name, he was given the title Father of Lies. It's not Father of Evil. It's the Father of Lies. So the battlefield for lies is our mind.
Yes.
And look, I've been in the battlefield. I've had my share. I think 16 times now I've been to Iraq or Syria as a high-risk humanitarian missionary, recovering children, facilitating rescues, giving, you know, trauma relief.
Yeah.
I've been shot at, mortared, you know, and I'll tell you, as a Christian, for our faith, like that, we're doing this for the Lord. We're not military anymore.
Yes.
So and I would just say, you know, truth in the spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare is far more intense than physical battle.
Yeah.
I mean, I just
and
made a
most people
post.
aren't even aware. Most people aren't even aware that it's happening all around them.
Yeah. So the battlefield's the mind.
Yeah.
And like tomorrow is a sad anniversary of a young man that died, that I recruited and got into the work overseas, and he was from there, and he literally is a martyr, and he died saving a girl. Dave Eubanks was part of that team, and from Free Burma Rangers, and they're still continuing to do good work. Dave just texted me from Burma, and we're praying for his family to get in. But, you know, the battlefield is the mind.
It is.
So I would encourage people listening or watching, take thoughts captive. That is a discipline. You've heard of situational awareness. This is SSA, spiritual situational awareness, where you've got to take every thought captive.
Yes.
Where when a dart comes in, you go, is that from God, me, or the devil? And, you know, there's only 3 places a thought's going to originate, unless you have multiple personalities, and then that's
that is the caveat, right?
Yeah, it's still siloed in the personality.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to me that you could start in with such a tough upbringing. Tell us a little bit about your path to healing. Like, how did you get from a place of absolute destruction to the visits for counseling, you know, the record-setting pace to healing? How did you, and what role did faith, when did faith enter this equation? Because you obviously weren't raised in a home of faith. How did that all transpire?
Well, surprisingly enough, I was.
Really?
Yeah, I was born Catholic, raised Baptist. We hit the Pentecostal movement. You know, it's the pathway to healing is interesting. And in childhood, I would say this: I always wanted to grow up. I had the hope that if I grew up, my life could be better. So I didn't want to give up, and I just endured. And the changes, I think it was 14 schools, 17 houses.
Gosh.
You know, and everything that comes along with that. And all I could say is, well, I recognize where I am now as a 6th grader who doesn't know how to throw a baseball. You know, and I literally was on a team and proved it. The only time my siblings came to a game, they hit it to me. I was the position behind first base. What is that? What is that?
Right field.
Right field.
Yeah.
And I missed the catch. I pick up the ball. I don't know how to control my adrenaline. I don't know how to throw a ball. I throw it so hard, Jimmy, but my release was right in front of me. And it hit 3 feet in front of me in the mud flying. People start laughing. I think I picked it up and underhanded it. So,
listen, there is a punchline there around Anthony Fauci. I've seen him throw out a first pitch, and boy, oh boy, it sounds familiar.
Yeah, another reason why kids need dads, okay? Yeah. Just to keep us from being embarrassed.
Yes.
So, you know, going through this whole deal as a kid, I was like, when I get older, I mean, I recognize I suck right now, but I'm not going to give up hope. And then when I got a little bit older, I could see the light of, as soon as I get out of school, I'm going to move away. And for me, I joined the Marine Corps. And that was a good step for me. I think it was God's will, because not all people who join the military, it's a good step, but it was good for me. Discipline, and I was able to kind of see what I could do unhampered by, you know, weirdness.
Yeah.
And I excelled. I actually graduated top of every class, from communications to shooting to becoming an instructor and then a competitive shooter. And I thought, all right. And I even started doing a little bit of college. And I thought, wow. And then I was struggling with life as a Marine because I did what the world said you had to do to be a man. Because all I wanted to do was be a man.
Yeah.
Just like the gun disarm. I was 7 years old when my stepfather put a pistol to my head, pulled a hammer back, and would tap it to the side of my head. And he said, if you ever tell anybody what I've done to you, I'll kill you. I'll blow your brains out and tell the police you played with my gun and shot yourself. So as a kid, I took this self-vow. I'll be the fastest person. No one will ever be able to put a gun to my head without me taking it away. And I proved it. Hundreds of millions of views later, I've done this thing all around the world on everybody from a kid, a gang member, to a Delta operator, right? So, so to get back
by the way, real quick on that,
yeah,
I've seen a lot of those videos, but better than that, you invested some time in my son. We go home and he starts teaching me, and that's the beauty of when you invest in a young man like that. They immediately want to get great at something, and then they want to pass it on. That's why it's a worthwhile investment. So he starts showing me, and I'm like, wait, what do you do, and how do you hit, and what? Oh my gosh! We're doing these drills in our house, and by the time we're done, he's got my wife engaged.
I love it.
And now it's just total bedlam, you know?
I love it.
Yeah.
And believe me, many good men have died developing what really works. Not out of books, but in real life. And passing that stuff on matters. It's a joy for those of us to do that. Know we're entrusting it into something that will be handed down generation to generation. But becoming a man, that's what I wanted. And you know what the world said? The world said, hey, if you be a man, you got to fight, hold your liquor, and chase women and get women. So I did that. And what I quickly realized being in the Marines, I knew girls who could do the same as me and sometime better. Great fighters, females, could drink more than me, and they could get more women than me. And I said, this has got to be the worst definition of manhood, right? What a girl is whooping me in all three. So it was about that time, and I got in some trouble in the Marine Corps, that my biological dad writes me a letter. We hadn't been in touch but a few times. And he starts off this letter by calling me son. He goes, dear son. And I'll tell you the truth, it aggravated me so much, Jimmy. I was like, don't call me son. I know how you got my mom pregnant. You left. You haven't been there for me. And he goes, I know you think I'm crazy. Hence, the history proves it. And then his next line is what really blew me away. He goes, this time I'm crazy for Jesus Christ.
Amazing.
And I went, what's the catch?
Yeah.
There's gotta be a catch to this. And he said, look, never been a dad. I took responsibility, which was pretty impressive. He said, just come and visit me. So I did. I took leave of absence. The Marine Corps let me go because I was getting...
Because you're crazy.
Yeah, and I was in trouble with the Marines, and they said, we'll let you go visit, because I said, this is my real dad, and da-da. So they let me go. And here's this guy, thick forearms, a nose that stayed flat, tattoos. He was a bouncer for 27 years. He was in the Navy and a smoker boxer champion. He was raised in a boys' home for part of his life, St. John Bosco's boys' home, and there was something different about him.
Wow.
And he said, I've given my life to Jesus, and I'm going to follow him. And I thought, this is wild. He nothing perfect about that guy.
Yeah.
But the direction of his life, I saw it change.
Wow.
So it was him, Jimmy, that invited me to go to church. And I was like, I'll go sit in the back. And I heard the simple gospel that Jesus died on the cross. And I knew it. I knew I'd heard the gospel before. I'd been to Christian school. I'd done the thing. But it was that day, June 22nd, 1986. And I ain't a big mathematician, but it's next month. And that's a few decades of knowing the Lord.
That's
and
amazing.
I can tell you, he's never failed me. He's never failed me.
Wow. And so you were, what, 20, in your 20s?
20, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So.
But isn't it true, though, that's the proof of the reality of Christ, the reality of faith, is when you see absolute transformation of someone that you thought could never change. There's no way and someone who had been abusive in so many ways. I mean, think about it. You're watching the reality of transformation in front of you. That's very attractive.
Yeah. I was shocked more than anybody. I
Yeah.
remember one time reading my Bible and I started laughing. This is just a few months after I come to faith. I'm laughing. I'm just laughing by myself because I thought, I'm reading the Bible and I love it. I cannot believe this. I'm
Like,
reading
who
it.
is this person?
Yeah, and it made sense. And for a lot of people, they've never really been born again.
Yeah.
They may be religious like I was, but you're not born again.
Yeah.
So you try to read the Bible, doesn't really stick.
Yeah.
Spiritual things aren't a big interest.
Yeah.
When you really repent of a lifestyle of sin, when you believe that Jesus died for you, and then he rose from the dead, and he's the Son of God,
Yes.
and you put your trust, faith in him,
Yes.
that's when things change.
Yes.
That's when transformation starts. And I'll tell you, like I tell everybody, man, it is not about perfection when you become a Christian. It's direction. If it was about perfection, I wouldn't be going to heaven because I have not been able to live the perfect life. But Jesus did, and I weigh in on that often. And when I stumble, when I fall, when I sin, by willful sinning, or just like, oh, shoot, I didn't see that coming. All I do is ask the Lord to cleanse me and forgive me.
Yeah.
And he does. That's what I love about, if you don't know what the Bible says, it's harder to really be able to understand it because it says that if you confess your sin, he's faithful and he's just to forgive you of all unrighteousness, everything. And somebody's listening up there going, yeah, but you don't know what I've done. I don't care what you've done.
Yeah.
God forgives all. The cross is enough for all. Jimmy, I was praying for a pastor one time.
Yeah.
The pastor's like, hey, man, I struggle with rage. Can you just pray for me? Because I believe people can have demonic assignments, right?
Yeah.
And I figured as much. This guy probably has some demonic, but he's a well-known preacher, you know, been on TV and all that. And we're up in a little hotel room, and I start praying for him. And he's definitely got a demon that's latched onto him
Wow.
that ain't happy. And I'm like, hey, man, this demon has some type of legal right to still hassle you and drive you. And he's not possessed. I want people to know I don't believe a Christian can be possessed. But the oppressive attachment of a demon can be so severe. You might as well be. You're going to see the same fruit. And he goes, I don't know what it is. And after a while, I just finally said, Lord, I don't know what to do. This demon has some right. This guy doesn't know. And then the guy goes, this pastor goes, I know what it is. I go, okay, what? And I'm waiting for porn or something. I was like I care. I don't care what's it. He goes, I murdered a man. I murdered a man. And I was like, okay, is that it? He goes, I never told the police. I said, well, that's between you, God, and the authorities. He goes, I was a young man involved in a gang and the occult. Nobody knows. This guy tried to kill me, but I killed him instead. And I said, well, just ask the Lord for forgiveness. He goes, I thought I did. I said, say it again. He did. All of a sudden, the demon had no legal right, and he got set free. And that rage in him was gone after. Hey, this brother was in his 70s, just so you know.
Gosh. So he carried that his entire life, even as a believer.
Entire life, which he didn't have to. And demons will just, it's Ephesians 6. They throw fiery darts. If you can't hold up the shield of faith, if you start believing the lie, then it's a stronghold, and then you're not living victorious. And that's, I think, what's holding back true Christians from being light and salt in this world. It's not about image maintenance, which we always work on. It's like, who cares, you know?
I think it's really interesting because you said, there's a couple things that are ringing in my head around this. Number one is that whom the Son sets free is free indeed.
Yeah.
This freedom from that. And I remember when I came to faith in Christ, I was a very religious person.
Yeah.
My value with God was all built up into, did I have a good day? Was I good enough today? And if I was, I felt good with God. And if I made mistakes, I felt like I was condemned by God. And it was
That's
just this
horrible.
mess of performance, right?
Yeah.
And what I discovered was when Christ sets you free, it's not about what you're doing, it's about what he's already done on your behalf.
Yeah.
And that freedom, I actually remember there's a book called Pilgrim's Progress.
Yep.
Talks about, letting the burden go. I remember physically feeling that burden lift off of me when I came to faith in Christ. And it's not about perfection, because what we tend to do then is say, great, now my life in Christ has to be perfect. And then we put that yoke of performance back on, and we never feel good enough again. It's the same trap of the enemy. It's all about progress, not perfection.
That's good.
What you said it, what direction it's changed your direction. And this idea of forgiveness. Talk about this a little bit, because for me, forgiven means forever.
Yeah.
That God separates that from, as far as the east is from the west, those two things never meet. And you can live in that freedom. You can live that victorious life. You talk a lot about what it takes to live a victorious life. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I believe just what you said. The first thing is knowing that you're forgiven.
Yeah.
Truly forgiven. When God forgives us of sin, he uses the east is from the west.
Yes.
The reality is it doesn't exist anymore.
Yes. It's gone.
It's if you try to remember the sin, you might remember the incident,
Yeah.
but in God's record book, it doesn't exist.
That's right.
There may be consequences from a sin that affect your life,
Yep.
but the sin itself has been forgiven and wiped away.
Gone.
And that's where believers have to walk in that. Otherwise, condemnation, which ain't of God, because condemnation it pushes you away from the cross.
Yes.
Conviction, which is a
Yes.
beautiful thing, draws you to the cross. It's like, oh gosh, Lord, thank you for showing me this. Please forgive me. And then the second thing is, when you've been forgiven, it's easier to forgive others.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'll tell you, listeners, in this kind of our last segment here, I was asked by God to forgive the man that abused me the most, my stepfather. And it was later in life.
Yeah.
I was actually working in a ministry called Focus on the Family with Dr. Dobson.
Wow.
I was an assistant to him, which shows you how messed up I was. I think God was saying, I got to get you right up in there, because if you're going to have
special help.
to
Yeah.
run your family, I'll put you right next to the man who wrote the books on it.
So good.
But I ended up finding this fellow, my stepfather. He had been to prison, and he was out. And I remember knocking on his door, and it was a little trailer on a river.
Yeah.
And this man, believe me, this man was, he was a highly educated. He was in the gas and oil business. His brother was a prominent attorney. It wasn't like a little drug slinger on the corner.
Right.
He was arrested for bringing in boats and planes from other countries. But he was just bound by sin and wickedness. So I knocked on the door.
Yeah.
He was shocked. And I had a choice to. Now, here's what's key, is the definition of forgiveness. My definition, best I've ever heard, is giving up my right to hurt someone back for hurting me.
Wow. Wow. I've
Giving
never
up my
heard that.
right,
I love that.
yeah, giving up my right to hurt someone back for hurting me. And Jimmy,
Wow.
forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation,
Right.
and it doesn't mean we rule out justice, because justice can still be done even in the name of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And on a side note, a guy who wanted me dead, an ISIS fighter, I not only forgave him, he just got captured wearing Mosul. I prayed for him. So, but he still had to face the consequence,
Oh,
which
yeah.
was inevitable.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I need you to talk about All Things Possible Ministries, okay? Because it'd be a big miss if we don't. We got to talk a bunch about that. Got about 15 minutes left if you're game.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about your commitment to marriage and men. Okay. So, but
Yeah.
let me tee it up a little bit with All Things Possible. I mean, one of the most attractive things about your ministry is you're focusing on going into some of the most dangerous environments to reach and restore victims of trauma, particularly focused on children
Yeah.
and women, and of course the military, but children and women. Let's start with kids, right? Because this is a passion point for so many of us.
Yeah.
Talk about what's going on and how All Things Possible Ministries is stepping into the space with children and women. What's happening?
Well, regardless of a person's background or faith or religious preference or political, economic, it doesn't matter. Children should be protected.
Yes.
Children should be left alone. And we prefer to start in the womb, but for somebody who doesn't even share that position, you have to admit, protect children that are innocent.
Yes.
So we started this, my wife and I, many years ago. I know God's given me this heart to protect and to help. And we went into Iraq the first time to help girls who had been held captive, horribly abused as sex slaves by ISIS. And when we did that, it changed our world
Wow.
fast to where we end up getting a home in Iraq, a safe house.
Wow.
And we've never stopped helping those who've been affected by abuse, torture, sex trafficking, all of it, terrorists and others overseas, where to date we've helped over 43,000 women and children.
My gosh.
Documented.
It's hard to even get, for most of us to even get our heads around that. The magnitude of the impact and the difference you're making. But and to realize there's so much more of it out there that there's such a great need.
Well, thank you. We've grown our teams through wisdom and training and God's help. The Lord has always been faithful because we're nonprofit. We take no government money.
Yeah.
We've been offered, but we've turned it down because we don't want anybody's fingerprint on us except the Lord's.
Yes.
And literally, we were just in Iraq recently at our house, and a girl, get this, a girl who had been kidnapped and held for 7 years by ISIS.
Oh my gosh.
One of the longest held girls, and there still are others. She got abducted at 11 years old. Her parents killed. But she was in our house 48 hours after she was free. 48 hours. She had a broken nose, a broken back, and the biggest smile you've ever seen. And I posted a picture of her with us. We blurred her face for security reasons, but it's unreal. And now we're putting it through medical treatment, through psychological counseling and healing. And we'll put her through school. Well, so.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things I love most about what you're doing. First of all, any man that finds out what you're doing wishes they were doing, in some ways, they were doing what you're doing, because there is something in us that is designed to be a protector, designed to be a warrior, and designed to do good for other people. So there is that piece, right?
Yep.
But what I love about what your ministry is doing is that there's probably not a more tangible ministry that I'm familiar with in this space than you all. 43,000 people rescued in one way or another, whether it's kids, women, etc., rescued tangibly. So what I love about that, being a financial partner with you guys, now a new financial partner, what I'm excited about is my wife and my investment in you all is going to liberate people. It's going to bring freedom and healing, which would not happen without you and your network and your team.
Well, thank you so much for support, because you're part of the team that makes it happen.
Yeah.
We all have to run in our own lane, and we've facilitated so many people getting set free, but yet the biggest bulk of what we do is helping them heal.
Yeah.
Because if you don't help them heal emotionally and spiritually,
Yes.
bad things are going to happen. The suffering and torment continues forever. That's just the Middle East. We have a safe house in Southeast Asia. We do work south of the border, on the border of Mexico, Colombia. There are other places. And then here in the U.S.,
Yeah.
we hunt pedophiles and we help facilitate packaging, target packages of, girls who are being trafficked and boys. And let me tell you how real and live this is, Jimmy. You were here.
Yeah.
Since we talked, we brought in 4 girls that were driven by our associate team, 10 hours to get here. 4 girls who were being trafficked.
In the States.
In the States, 4 girls, all sisters, by their mom.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, gang-related, organized crime in this sense. The oldest is 18, the youngest is 10. They've been being abused and trafficked forever. The mother was targeting the 10-year-old because she just got out of jail, and she wanted to sell the 10-year-old because she can get the most for her. We bring them here. Now, what you're about to hear is going to blow your mind. And your audience, this is how real it is for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got them here at our safe house, and, we have 2 fences, dogs. It's high security.
I've seen the dogs. The dogs are very serious.
Yeah, these are tier 1 trained
Yeah,
dogs.
you don't pet these dogs.
Yeah, they face ISIS fighters and done the deal. But yet they love women and children. It's men that they will hurt their feelings. So
understand.
on Easter, we take these girls to our church
Gosh.
that we attend. And it's Al Pittman, Calvary Worship Center.
Amazing.
We're in church on Easter, and we're just thinking, oh, Lord, please touch these girls' hearts. And, they need hope and healing, and may the message. And then we find out one of the girls' phones have been compromised.
Oh my gosh.
And then next we found out right then, 2 guys drove 10 hours, bad guys, drove 10 hours to abduct one of the girls.
Oh my gosh.
They're in the parking lot of this church.
Easter Sunday.
Easter Sunday. We have to take the girls. We have to ease them out of the sanctuary, ease them upstairs to a secure room. I tell the security team, gents, we've had guys come here to train and I said, this is a situation. This is not a drill. This is real. They're like, holy smokes, it's happening. The way they responded was so professional, and kudos, because every church security team needs to have good training because stuff is real these days. Mm-hmm. Well, long story short, I ended up calling the guy because we got a number, and I said, hey, I know you're here, and I know you're waiting. All your plans are going to be, I know you drove 10 hours, and it's part of your deal. And then he starts, rah, 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 rah. And I've never done this, I promise you. I've never, ever used my name as some type of leverage or platform. But in that moment, because they were outside, and I just said, dude, Google my name, Victor Marx with an X, and tell me if I'm not a player. Tell me if you want to get messy. Because we're very good at this. And thank God he did. And then,
Unreal.
they headed out of town. We tracked them, and then we found them 5 hours later, heading back to the city they were from. And now we've put together a target package with law enforcement and everything. Because this girl, we were able to pull off everything we need for physical evidence of abuse and trafficking. And that little girl gave her life to the Lord 2 days later. And amazing, the difference. So, on a side note, my family, bless my family's heart, they're like, it's Easter Sunday, Dad.
Yep.
I'm like, yep, it is.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hey, no better day to have the ultimate freedom, right? Jeez.
Yeah, yeah.
Gosh.
So when I asked people to pray, and we did,
Mhm.
thousands pray.
Mhm.
And then when people like you support us, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
me and my wife, yeah. People say, well, aren't you one of those ministries that you just collect money and get rich? And I'm all, yeah. Our dream house is a 24 by 24 steel building, like a barndominium with 3 floors. Give me a break. I drive a truck on a dirt road.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And you drive pretty slow, I might add. You drive
I do. I'm like a grandma driver until I go overseas, and then, yeah.
Well, I love this story because I think part of what I was hoping would happen, and it just happened, is that we're going to open some people's eyes to the very real threat right now, right
Yeah.
here. Like
Oh,
sometimes
yes.
we always think in terms of, oh, well, that happens over there, or that, whatever. No, this is the clear and present danger right here. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, are there some things that we need to be more aware of as moms and dads, as families, to be prepared to see things differently, situationally, so that we can prevent this stuff from happening to our families right now?
Yeah. So what I'm about to say may piss off a few folks, but hey, it's a reality. And when you hear people talking about counter sex trafficking, counter pedophile work and all, you better make sure they're qualified and they know what they're saying
Yes.
and what they're doing. Otherwise, they're just regurgitating something that doesn't make sense. So I would say first, let me talk to the single mom. The biggest threat you have, and of course, a father should be present to protect your child, but the biggest threat you have is bringing home a loser that you meet at a nightclub or even at church. You bring them home, you compromise your values, you let this person into the house, you're sleeping with them, which all of a sudden now you're emotionally attached. And then that person who you don't even know has access to your children when you're not there. That's the biggest occurrence of sexual abuse that I've seen is mothers in their weakness, naivety, or selfishness will bring a dude home who's a predator and a monster. And I mean, I just had a situation today on Instagram. If people go to my Instagram, they'll see it. I reported a mother who ran over her boyfriend because she found him in bed naked with her 7-year-old child.
Unbelievable.
And I said, moms, y'all got to do a better job than this. So, and the lady responded, quit blaming, victim shaming. I was like, what? I said, the child, well, we did a long thread. That ended up being a mother who that happened to her daughter.
Wow.
And the beautiful thing, by the time we're ended, I said, here's a video I want you to watch. Triggered 2, T-O-O. It's a film we produced and made. It will bring you comfort, not condemnation, and a way out. And this woman was actually very courageous on how she handled all this. So that's the first thing. Second, you've got to be aware of what your children watch. The messaging from the demonic. Now, I've been involved in counter messaging in the aspect of terrorism and whatnot for many years because of what we do and how we stay alive. But you must know that there's a very real battle for your child's mind. Everybody's looking for the van to pull up and abduct a kid. And I'm like, that's real. But what's more insidious is this messaging that children will get from Disney movies, from TV shows, from TikTok, from social media, that will start to diminish your child's ability to know right from wrong, evil from good, and it makes them weak and vulnerable to a predator who online will reach out to them, or a guy that they meet as a teen or preteen who smooth talks them. And look, this is what I tell girls and women: be very leery of the nice guy. Nice guys will do and say what they need to in order to get what they want.
Yes.
And the moment you don't give them what they want, they're not nice. Those are predatory type guys often. I tell them, look for a kind guy, a kind, dangerous gentleman.
Yes.
And that's a book that's going to be coming out that I'm working on. I'm telling you,
Yes.
kind men will look out for the female, the girl's best interest. Won't cross boundaries. Will actually protect them, even when a girl is vulnerable and says, you can have me. A dangerous gentleman will say, not yet. Not till we're married. I desire you, but wait till we're married. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, and then the other thing I would just say is be very careful who your kids' friends are.
Yeah.
Letting your kids stay over at somebody's house. The parents may be nice, but the parents may drink and let people into the house. They could have a brother has perversion. And let me tell you what, younger men are looking at hardcore child porn.
Yeah.
Right now, the trend is up because nothing else satisfies, which makes children very vulnerable. So
Yeah.
be vigilant.
Yes.
Don't just trust everybody, and set up boundaries that are healthy, and be very careful about letting your kids go stay the night with people, because that's where all the instances happen.
Yeah, I love that. And you may be the parents that everyone says, oh, they're so strict or they're so overprotective, but I would rather be that person than the anything goes parent that has regrets in the end. I mean,
Yeah.
we're called to stand in this gap and protect our kids. And let's talk, last topic. I know you've got a huge Kingdom Men's Movement event coming up. Tell us a little bit about that. Why is it so important that men learn really how to be strong men? Why is this important? And tell us a little bit about the event.
Okay, well, first event's May 21st. It's at Fort Carson here in Colorado Springs. We're doing this for both civilian men and their sons and military men. There's already been 10 suicides in the first 4 months at Fort Carson. So we are going into the belly of the beast. We could have this men's event in 100 other locations, but we're going in. Some people go, it makes it hard. I have to register to get on base. So what? Pull out your license and registration card, spend 5 minutes. You do it for a football game. So we're going in May 21st. We've got Nick Vujicic, the gentleman with no arms and legs. He's been a friend of mine. I've known him since he was single. I love Nick. We've got Denver Bronco Reisner coming down, Dalton. We've got retired Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Teagues, a Delta operator with over 1,000 missions, 5 Bronze Stars and a Silver, never lost a man in battle. Best monster hunter I've ever known, worked with, and he's actually our chief operations officer.
That's amazing.
Trust me, pedophiles look under their beds for him at night.
Good.
And we've got Mark Little, an attorney, a brilliant man, a minister, unbelievable brother and friend. And his story is powerful. He lost his leg protecting his fiance, his soon-to-be wife, in a mugging accident over in L.A. And this guy is one of the strongest, most solid intellectuals. And he's been on a lot of social media for standing up for the unborn and representing clients. And then Frank Sontag, longtime friend, good brother, KKLA. So can I tell you one closing story?
Oh, yeah, let's go.
That I think will encourage men. This happened yesterday. If somebody's life is boring, hang out with me. For some reason, we don't like boring. Yeah. Maybe it's a prayer I prayed when I was a young Christian. I was like, I don't want to live a boring life. And the Lord's
you don't attract boring. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So,
especially since your wife is practicing with blow darts.
Oh, yeah, trust me.
She's for real. She's legit.
She's been. I tell people, you say you want to come home after a mission. Tell your wife, yeah, ISIS was shooting at me, and then we walked through bodies, and my wife's like, yeah, I was right next to you.
Exactly.
So my wife's a team member, secondary grade black belt, can shoot multiple platforms.
Amazing.
And yes, can work a blow dart gun. So,
and by the way, before you tell your story, I think this is a key element of overall protection and safety is that we're in it together, right? That that our wives
sure.
are not sitting ducks. Our daughters are not sitting ducks. Let's get them prepared. Let's get them aware.
Hey, me and my wife shoot the same
Same guy.
type of handgun. And people go, why? I go, because if I get shot standing in the gap, I want my wife to be able to pick up my weapon, load, clear, engage the target like that.
Yes.
Or, in some cases, if I'm eating a root beer float, I want her to do the shooting. And I'll throw her an extra mag if she needs backup.
Here, honey.
Same mag.
Same mag. Yes.
So here, my wife and I are sitting at a doctor's office yesterday, and when we walk into the waiting room, there's a guy there, and he's pretty chatty about his spiritual. He's pretty verbose about it. He's proud about his spiritual, stuff, and he has a gift of healing and a ministry of healing, and he wants to find out where we go to church. And I'm quiet, because although I'm like this in public and private, I really am an introvert. People wouldn't believe it, but it's true. But this is what I do outward. So we're sitting there, my wife's talking to him, I'm watching him engage, and then next thing you know, he says, I want to pray for y'all. I feel like I'm supposed to pray for y'all. It's like, okay. And I'm thinking, well, we're not sick. We're here for,
routine.
Routine, vitamin, but yeah, okay, go ahead. So he stands up and he goes, okay, I'm going to pray for you. I said, you sure can. Just don't touch us. And he goes, what? I said, yeah, I don't want you to touch me and my wife. He goes, why not? I said, because I don't know you. We don't know you. You're just a guy we just met. So I'm particular about if God, puts on, hey, who's going to actually lay hands? He goes, well, I normally hold hands. I said, well, not this time. And he's like, and then there's people watching, this nurse is, and I'm not being rude. I'm just being very direct.
Yes.
And I got my wife there. And then he goes, well, I guess I can pray without touching you on it to work. I said, have at it. And then he says this, and that's what I want husbands and men to know. You better be ready to stand up in a time of stupidity and not give a flying squirrel sack what anybody thinks when it's time to do the right thing. And he literally says this. This was yesterday. He goes, whatever you've learned about the Bible, whatever you know about God, everything, all the preconceived, just wipe it from your mind right now before I pray. And I said, no. And then he kept talking. He ignored me. So whatever, I'm going to pray just whatever. And I said, that's not going to happen. And I said aloud. And he stopped. He goes, what? I said, that's not going to happen. I said, we don't know you. You want to lay hands on us. Now you're telling us 30-something years of walking with the Lord, Bible study, growth, experience, we're all to wipe that away for you to say some type of prayer? Not going to happen, buddy.
Love it.
And my wife's like, that's my man. That's my man. He goes, he stands up flustered. He stands up flustered and he goes, well, I don't have to pray for y'all. I said, no, you don't. Thanks for your intent. See ya.
Yes.
And he stomped out like his feelings are hurt. And again, I wasn't rude. I mean, I could have cut him open, but, it's just, dude.
Yes.
So men, and a nurse who was there, she was sitting there, she watched it all, she goes, what just happened? I said, all I had was healthy boundaries. This guy, and my wife said it, she goes, he tried to put spiritual authority over us, over everybody. Like he was the guy for spiritual. Yeah. And that wasn't going to happen. You know, that little nurse, about 3 weeks ago, we led her to Christ.
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, you're like a spiritual daughter. I'm glad you got to see this because you should stand up. You have a right to stand up, your voice be heard, set up boundaries. So,
yes.
Yeah, I think we lack that in men today because Christianity is taught you have to be nice. No, I don't. And I tell people, I'm not a nice person. I'm kind. I'll put my kindness against anybody. Yes. But I'm not nice, and I won't let predators or weird people, walk over anybody. So
well, and that is such a great kind of capstone to our conversation, right? Because this whole thing is about being ready.
Yeah.
It's not being apologetic for being ready to protect, ready to defend, ready to step in. And I think that masculinity, right? Because, masculinity is taking quite a beating over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
That masculinity is wildly attractive, and it draws people to, I think, to the character and good nature of God and the strength of God in a way that is, you can't do it any other way.
Right. Well, it's attractive to my wife out there right now.
I bet it is.
She's giving me those little sweet eyes.
Yeah, that's pretty good after 30 plus, buddy. That's
Yeah,
not bad.
I was like, all right.
I'm proud of you. Hey, listen, Victor, seriously, this has been just an incredible hour with you.
I've enjoyed
Thankful
it.
for your friendship. Thankful for your ministry. Thanks
You too,
for
Jimmy.
Yeah, thanks for everything that you're doing to rescue people and also to call the next generation of young men and young women and families to really stand for righteousness.
Yes.
So super grateful for you, my friend.
All right, I appreciate you and your family. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, brother. God bless you, man.
You as well.